In the shadowy archives beneath Alexandria's ancient library, thousands of papyrus scrolls vanished into history, deliberately destroyed or hidden away. Among them were the most profound teachings of Thoth, the Egyptian god of wisdom, who understood something about reality that would fundamentally challenge everything we think we know about consciousness and the universe. Thoth wasn't just another mythological figure. He was credited with discovering the mathematical principles that govern both cosmic movement and human thought patterns. The fragments that survived, like the cryptic emerald tablet with its famous declaration, "As above, so below," hint at a sophisticated understanding of how individual consciousness connects to universal patterns. What made Thoth's knowledge so dangerous? He revealed that your mind isn't separate from the cosmos. It's literally entangled with it through principles that modern quantum physics is only beginning to rediscover. This wasn't mystical speculation. It was a precise science of consciousness that explained how thoughts influence reality and why certain people seem to experience impossible synchronicities. The implications were so profound that this knowledge was systematically buried, leaving humanity disconnected from our true cosmic nature. When neuroscientists first discovered that human brains can synchronize their electrical patterns without any direct physical connection, they thought their equipment was malfunctioning. The idea that one person's thoughts could influence another's brain activity from across a room challenged everything we believed about the privacy and independence of human consciousness. Yet the evidence kept mounting. Dr. Jacobo Grinberg's groundbreaking experiments in the 1990 seconds showed that when two people meditated together, their brainwaves would begin to mirror each other with mathematical precision. When one person was shown a flashing light, the other person's brain would respond as if they had seen the light too, even though they were sitting in a completely dark room, sometimes hundreds of meters away. This wasn't some mystical phenomenon. This was measurable, repeatable science revealing that your individual consciousness operates within something much larger, a field of shared mental activity that connects every human mind on the planet. Thoth understood this principle thousands of years before we had the technology to measure it. In the Hermetic texts attributed to him, he described what he called the universal mind, a cosmic intelligence that flows through all living beings, making individual consciousness possible while simultaneously connecting every mind to every other mind. What modern neuroscience calls neural synchronization or brain coupling, Thoth called participation in the divine intellect. You've experienced this collective mental field countless times, though you probably dismissed these experiences as coincidence. Think about the last time you walked into a room and immediately felt the tension from an argument that had just ended. Nobody told you what happened, yet somehow you knew. The emotional atmosphere had been disturbed. Your brain was picking up the residual neural patterns left by the intense emotional exchange. Or consider how often you've thought of someone just moments before they called or texted you. Researchers studying this phenomenon have found that it occurs far more frequently than statistical probability would allow. When they examined the brain activity of people experiencing these moments of apparent telepathy, they discovered that the individual's neural oscillations had been synchronizing in the minutes leading up to the contact, as if their minds were already in communication before the conscious decision to reach out was made. The most compelling evidence comes from studies of shared dreaming. Indigenous cultures have long recognized that family members or close friends can experience nearly identical dreams on the same night, often featuring specific details that neither person could have known about the other's life. When sleep researchers finally began investigating these reports seriously, they found that people who share strong emotional bonds often display synchronized REM cycles, even when sleeping in different locations. Carl Jung spent decades documenting what he called the collective unconscious, a deeper layer of mental activity that contains the shared experiences, symbols, and archetypal patterns of all humanity. Jung believed he was making a revolutionary discovery, but he was actually rediscovering ancient wisdom that Thoth had encoded in the Hermetic principle, as above, so below. The macrocosm of universal consciousness is reflected in the microcosm of individual awareness, and individual awareness participates in the larger cosmic mind. This collective mental field doesn't just influence your emotions and dreams, it shapes your daily decisions, your beliefs, and even your sense of who you are as a person. When you suddenly find yourself craving a particular food, feeling drawn to a specific place, or having an inexplicable change of opinion about something important, you might be responding to information flowing through this shared consciousness network. Market researchers have known about this phenomenon for decades. They've discovered that consumer trends don't spread through logical channels of communication. They emerge simultaneously in multiple locations, as if the collective mind has reached a consensus. Fashion trends, political movements, and cultural shifts follow patterns that suggest they're being coordinated by some invisible intelligence that operates faster than any known form of human communication. The implications of this discovery are staggering. The privacy of thought that you've always assumed was your birthright might be nothing more than an illusion created by your limited awareness of the mental field you're swimming in. You're constantly broadcasting your thoughts, emotions, and intentions into this collective space, while simultaneously receiving and processing the mental transmissions of everyone around you. Most people participate in this collective consciousness completely unconsciously. They absorb the fears, desires, and beliefs of their social environment without realizing that these mental patterns didn't originate in their own minds. They make decisions based on impulses and intuitions that are actually coming from the collective field, mistaking these external influences for their own authentic inner voice. The most profound evidence for how this collective consciousness operates in our daily lives can't be shared on platforms like YouTube. We reserve the deepest insights for our free Insights Academy newsletter, where you'll also receive a complimentary copy of the Kybalion for a limited time. But here's where Thoth's ancient wisdom becomes immediately practical for your life today. Once you understand that your mind is connected to this vast network of human consciousness, you can begin to participate in it consciously, rather than being unconsciously manipulated by it. You can learn to distinguish between thoughts that originate from your own authentic awareness and mental patterns that you're absorbing from the collective field. This isn't about becoming isolated from human connection. It's about becoming a conscious participant in the larger intelligence that connects us all. When you understand how the collective mind operates, you can contribute to it intentionally, broadcasting thoughts and emotions that elevate the entire network, rather than simply adding to the unconscious noise that keeps most people trapped in reactive patterns. The ancient Egyptian initiates who studied under Thoth learned to navigate this collective mental space with the same skill that a sailor navigates the ocean. They understood that individual consciousness is like a wave on the surface of an infinite sea of awareness, and that by aligning with the deeper currents of this cosmic mind, they could access knowledge and capabilities that far exceeded what any single human brain could generate on its own. You're driving to work, thinking about an old college friend you haven't spoken to in months. The memory surfaces unbidden, their laugh, that ridiculous hat they always wore, wondering how their art career turned out. Your phone buzzes. It's them, texting out of nowhere. "Hey, was just thinking about you." Your heart skips. The timing feels impossible, almost eerie. You stare at the message, and for a moment, the ordinary world seems to shimmer with hidden connections. This isn't the first time something like this has happened to you. Maybe it was finding exactly the book you needed at a yard sale, right when you were wrestling with a major life decision. Or hearing a song that perfectly captured your emotional state, playing in a random cafe at the exact moment you walked in. Most people dismiss these moments as mere coincidence. But what if I told you that Thoth understood these experiences as glimpses into the fundamental architecture of reality itself? Carl Jung, the pioneering psychologist, gave this phenomenon a name in 1952, synchronicity. He defined it as meaningful coincidence, events that are connected not by cause and effect, but by significance. Jung wasn't some mystical dreamer. He was a rigorous scientist who noticed something his colleagues couldn't explain. During his decades of therapeutic work, he observed that his patients' inner psychological breakthroughs often coincided with striking external events that seemed to mirror their internal transformation. One of Jung's most famous examples involved a patient who was describing a dream about a golden scarab beetle, a symbol of rebirth in Egyptian mythology. At that exact moment, Jung heard tapping on his office window. He opened it, and in flew a scarabæid beetle, its golden-green coloring catching the light. The patient's breakthrough came in that instant, as if the universe itself had participated in her healing. But Jung was building on knowledge that Thoth had encoded thousands of years earlier. In the Hermetic texts attributed to Thoth's wisdom, we find the principle, as above, so below, the understanding that the microcosm of human consciousness reflects the macrocosm of cosmic order. What Jung called synchronicity, Thoth knew as the natural communication system between mind and universe. The difference between random coincidence and true synchronicity isn't just timing, it's the unmistakable feeling that accompanies these moments. Real synchronicity carries emotional weight that hits you like a tuning fork struck in your chest. It feels pregnant with meaning, impossible to dismiss as mere chance. I've learned to recognize authentic synchronicity through 4 distinct markers. First is timing. The precision is often breathtaking, down to minutes or even seconds. Second is emotional resonance. You feel something shift inside you, a recognition that goes deeper than rational explanation. Third is symbolic relevance. The event connects meaningfully to your current life situation, often addressing exactly what you've been contemplating. Fourth is transformative impact. Genuine synchronicity doesn't just surprise you. It changes something fundamental about how you see your situation or yourself. Consider how many breakthrough discoveries happened through what scientists dismissively call lucky breaks. Alexander Fleming discovered penicillin when a contaminated petri dish revealed something extraordinary. But Fleming later admitted he'd been thinking intensely about antibacterial substances for months before that accidental contamination occurred. His mind was prepared, aligned with the possibility, when the universe provided the answer. Steve Jobs often spoke about connecting the dots in ways that only made sense looking backward. His random decision to audit a calligraphy class at Reed College, which seemed utterly impractical at the time, directly influenced the typography revolution that made Apple computers so distinctive. Was it coincidence, or was Jobs unconsciously following synchronistic guidance toward his destiny? Ancient oracles understood this principle intimately. The oracle at Delphi didn't just randomly spout prophecies. She interpreted the meaningful patterns that emerged when seekers brought their deepest questions to sacred space. The oracle's role was to recognize the synchronistic messages that were already present, waiting to be decoded. Thoth's teachings suggest that synchronicity operates according to discoverable cosmic principles. It's not random magic, it's the universe's feedback system, responding to the quality and intensity of our consciousness. When we're truly aligned with our authentic path, synchronicities multiply. When we're forcing outcomes or living from ego rather than deeper wisdom, these meaningful coincidences dry up. This challenges everything our materialist culture has taught us about how reality works. If synchronicity is real, if consciousness and physical events are genuinely interconnected, then we're not isolated biological machines struggling alone in an indifferent universe. We're participants in an intelligent cosmic system that responds to our inner state. The skeptical mind immediately objects. But what about all the times you think of someone and they don't call? What about the meaningless coincidences that happen every day? Fair questions. Not every coincidence carries meaning. The key is developing discernment, learning to distinguish between the background noise of random events and the clear signal of genuine synchronicity. But here's what's dangerous about dismissing all synchronicity as mere chance. You cut yourself off from one of the universe's primary communication channels. You reduce yourself to a purely reactive being, missing the guidance that's constantly available when you know how to recognize it. Start paying attention differently. Keep a synchronicity journal for 1 week. Notice not just the events, but how they make you feel, what you were thinking about beforehand, and what shifts in your perspective afterward. You might be surprised by the patterns that emerge. Thoth understood that synchronicity isn't something that happens to you, it's something you participate in through the quality of your awareness. The more conscious you become, the more the universe seems to conspire in your favor. And that conspiracy isn't supernatural. It's the natural result of aligning your individual consciousness with the deeper intelligence that connects all things. The ancient Egyptians called this intelligence Ma'at, the cosmic principle of truth, justice, and harmony. When you live in accordance with Ma'at, synchronicities flow naturally because you're swimming with the current of cosmic order rather than against it. You become a conscious participant in the universe's unfolding story, rather than a victim of random circumstance. This is the forbidden knowledge that materialist science doesn't want you to discover, that your consciousness is not separate from the world around you, but intimately connected to it in ways that can be experienced, understood, and consciously engaged. In 1945, the scientific world was rocked when Wolfgang Pauli, one of the most brilliant minds in quantum physics and winner of the Nobel Prize for discovering the exclusion principle, found himself in a state of complete psychological breakdown. This wasn't your typical midlife crisis. This was a man who had unlocked fundamental secrets of atomic structure, experiencing what he described as a collision between my rational scientific mind and forces I couldn't explain. Pauli's exclusion principle had revealed that no two electrons in an atom could occupy the same quantum state simultaneously, a discovery that helped explain the very structure of matter itself. Yet here was this giant of physics, tormented by vivid dreams filled with archetypal symbols, experiencing synchronicities so frequent and meaningful that his colleagues jokingly referred to the Pauli effect, the tendency for laboratory equipment to malfunction in his presence. Desperate for answers, Pauli did something unprecedented for a physicist of his stature. He walked into the office of Carl Jung, the pioneering psychologist who had been exploring the depths of human consciousness. What began as therapy sessions would evolve into one of the most extraordinary intellectual partnerships in modern history, a collaboration that would bridge the gap between mind and matter in ways that ancient wisdom keepers like Thoth had always understood. Jung was immediately fascinated by Pauli's case. Here was a man whose scientific work dealt with the invisible forces that govern reality at its most fundamental level, yet he was experiencing psychological phenomena that seemed to operate by entirely different rules. Or were they different rules at all? As their professional relationship deepened into genuine intellectual partnership, something remarkable began to emerge. Pauli started sharing with Jung his growing suspicion that quantum mechanics was revealing something profound about the nature of consciousness itself. The famous double-slit experiment had already demonstrated that particles behave differently when observed, suggesting that the act of conscious observation somehow influences physical reality at the most basic level. The observer cannot be separated from the observed, Pauli would write to Jung. Consciousness and matter are two complementary aspects of the same reality. This wasn't mystical speculation. This was coming from a man who had spent his career mapping the mathematical foundations of atomic behavior. Jung recognized immediately what Pauli was describing. It was the same principle that Thoth had encoded in the Emerald Tablet thousands of years earlier. As above, so below. The ancient Egyptian wisdom tradition had always taught that consciousness was the primary creative force in the universe, that mind and matter were fundamentally interconnected aspects of a single cosmic principle. Together, Jung and Pauli began exploring what they called archetypal patterns, universal structures that seemed to organize both psychological experiences and physical phenomena. Jung had already identified these archetypes in the human psyche, recurring patterns of thought and behavior that appeared across all cultures and throughout history. But Pauli was seeing similar patterns in quantum mechanics. The mathematics describing electron behavior, the geometric structures of crystals, the orbital patterns of planets. Everywhere Pauli looked, he found the same fundamental organizing principles that Jung was discovering in dreams, myths, and psychological development. It was as if the universe itself was structured according to archetypal patterns that manifested simultaneously in consciousness and matter. This led them to a revolutionary understanding of synchronicity. Jung had initially described synchronicity as meaningful coincidences, events that seemed causally unrelated but were connected by meaning. But working with Pauli, he began to see that synchronicity might reflect actual quantum-level connections between consciousness and physical events. Pauli's work had shown that quantum particles could be entangled, instantaneously connected across vast distances in ways that seemed to defy classical physics. What if consciousness operated according to similar principles? What if the meaningful coincidences people experienced weren't just psychological projections, but reflections of genuine quantum connections between mind and matter? Their collaboration produced insights that were decades ahead of their time. They proposed that consciousness wasn't simply produced by the brain, but was a fundamental property of the universe itself, what they called the psychophysical unity of reality. The brain, in this view, wasn't generating consciousness so much as receiving and focusing it, like a radio tuning into a cosmic broadcast. This understanding aligned perfectly with Thoth's ancient teachings about the mind's connection to universal consciousness. The Egyptian tradition had always described individual awareness as a localized expression of cosmic intelligence, a drop that contains the essence of the infinite ocean. But their work faced fierce resistance from both the scientific and psychological establishments. Physicists accused Pauli of abandoning scientific rigor for mystical speculation. Psychologists dismissed Jung's archetypal theories as unscientific. Neither community was ready to accept consciousness as fundamental to reality, rather than merely an emergent property of complex brain chemistry. The resistance was so intense that much of their correspondence remained private during their lifetimes. Pauli, despite his Nobel Prize status, found his funding threatened when he spoke publicly about the consciousness-matter connection. Jung faced similar professional isolation when he suggested that psychological phenomena might have physical correlates at the quantum level. Yet their work continued to influence a growing number of researchers who recognized the profound implications of what they were discovering. They had used the most rigorous tools of modern science to validate what ancient wisdom traditions had always taught, that consciousness and cosmos are intimately connected, that mind and matter are complementary aspects of a unified reality. What Pauli and Jung accomplished was nothing short of revolutionary. They demonstrated that the mechanistic worldview that had dominated Western thought for centuries was fundamentally incomplete. Reality wasn't just a collection of separate objects governed by mechanical forces. It was an interconnected web of consciousness and matter, mind and energy, observer and observed. Their collaboration laid the groundwork for understanding consciousness not as something that emerges from complex arrangements of matter, but as a cosmic principle that organizes and creates the material world itself. This was precisely what Thoth had encoded in the ancient mysteries, the recognition that your individual consciousness is connected to the creative intelligence that structures the entire universe. The bridge between ancient wisdom and modern science had been built, revealing that the forbidden knowledge Thoth discovered wasn't primitive superstition, but advanced understanding of reality's deepest principles. Picture this. You're sitting in your living room, thinking about an old friend you haven't spoken to in months, and suddenly your phone rings. It's them. Most people call this coincidence, but Thoth understood something that modern science is only beginning to grasp. Your mind isn't trapped inside your skull. It's connected to something far more profound. Thoth, the ancient Egyptian deity of wisdom and knowledge, possessed an understanding that challenges everything we've been taught about consciousness. While we've been conditioned to believe that our thoughts are private, isolated events happening inside our brains, Thoth knew that consciousness operates through what we might call a universal field, an invisible lattice that connects every mind in existence. This isn't mystical speculation, it's a sophisticated model of reality that parallels cutting-edge research in quantum field theory. Just as electromagnetic fields permeate space and allow radio waves to travel from transmitter to receiver, Thoth understood that consciousness operates through a similar medium, a field that exists everywhere simultaneously, connecting all points in space and time. Think about how your smartphone works. The device in your hand doesn't create the internet, it accesses it. Your phone is essentially a receiver and transmitter, connecting to an invisible network that exists independently of any single device. Thoth taught that your brain functions in precisely the same way. Rather than generating consciousness, your neural networks act as sophisticated biological receivers, tuning into frequencies of awareness that exist within this universal field. This understanding completely revolutionizes how we think about human potential. If consciousness isn't produced by your brain but rather translated through it, then phenomena we dismiss as supernatural, telepathy, precognition, remote viewing, become natural extensions of how consciousness actually operates. They're not violations of natural law, they're expressions of it. Consider what happened to Carl Jung and Wolfgang Pauli, which we explored earlier. Their synchronistic experiences weren't random coincidences, but evidence of consciousness operating through this universal lattice. When Jung was analyzing Pauli's dreams about quantum mechanical symbols, and when Pauli was simultaneously developing theories that mirrored Jung's psychological insights, they were both accessing information from the same field. Thoth's synergetic theory goes even deeper. He understood that what we experience as individual reality is actually a collaborative creation between our personal neural processing and this universal field. Your perception isn't just happening to you, you're actively participating in its construction by interfacing with patterns that already exist within the cosmic lattice. Imagine consciousness as an ocean. Most of us experience ourselves as individual waves, thinking we're separate from the water around us. But Thoth knew that each wave is simply the ocean expressing itself in a particular location. Your individual consciousness is the universal field experiencing itself through the unique filter of your neural networks, your memories, your conditioning. This explains why synchronicity feels so meaningful when it occurs. You're not just noticing random patterns, you're recognizing moments when your individual consciousness aligns perfectly with larger patterns already present in the field. It's like suddenly tuning into a radio station that's been broadcasting all along. The signal was always there, you just found the right frequency. Modern neuroscience is beginning to validate aspects of this ancient understanding. Research into quantum coherence in microtubules, the discovery of biophotons in neural tissue, and studies of entanglement in biological systems all point toward the brain functioning as something far more sophisticated than a classical computer. It's operating as a quantum interface device. But here's where Thoth's wisdom becomes truly transformative. If consciousness operates through a universal field, then your relationship with reality shifts from passive observer to active co-creator. You're not just experiencing a predetermined world, you're participating in its ongoing creation through your conscious attention and intention. This changes everything about how you approach your daily experience. Every moment of focused awareness, every conscious choice, every deliberate thought becomes an act of cosmic participation. You're not isolated in your individual bubble of consciousness. You're a unique node in an infinite network of awareness. The implications ripple outward in ways that challenge conventional thinking. If individual minds are connected through this universal lattice, then the boundaries between self and other become more fluid than we've imagined. The insights that arise during meditation, the creative breakthroughs that seem to come from nowhere, the intuitive hunches that prove accurate, these aren't products of your isolated brain, but information flowing through the field. Thoth understood that accessing this field consciously requires what we might call coherent states of awareness. When your neural networks achieve certain patterns of synchronization, through meditation, deep focus, or heightened emotional states, you become a clearer receiver for information present in the field. This is why ancient wisdom traditions developed specific practices for cultivating expanded awareness. The universal field that Thoth described operates beyond the limitations of space and time as we normally experience them. Information within this field exists in what physicists call a non-local state, meaning it's accessible from any point in the network simultaneously. This explains precognitive experiences, moments when you receive information about future events that already exist as probability patterns within the field. Understanding this transforms how you engage with your own consciousness. Instead of seeing your thoughts and intuitions as purely personal phenomena, you begin recognizing them as information flowing through a cosmic network. Your individual awareness becomes a conscious collaboration with universal intelligence itself. This is the forbidden knowledge that Thoth preserved, the recognition that consciousness isn't confined to biological boundaries but operates through a field that connects all existence. Your mind isn't separate from the cosmos, it's how the cosmos experiences itself through the unique perspective of your individual awareness. You're not just in the universe, you're how the universe knows itself. When Thoth mapped the cosmic communication system, he didn't just identify random patterns. He discovered 5 distinct channels through which universal intelligence speaks directly to individual consciousness. Each type operates according to specific principles, and understanding these mechanisms transforms how you experience reality itself. The first channel Thoth identified is perceptual synchronicity, and this one will completely change how you move through your daily environment. Picture yourself wrestling with a difficult decision about your career. You're walking down the street, mind churning with uncertainty, when you pass a construction sign that reads, "New path ahead, temporary detour required." Most people dismiss this as coincidence, but Thoth understood something profound. When consciousness is genuinely seeking guidance, perception becomes a bridge between your individual awareness and the cosmic intelligence that surrounds you. This isn't your imagination playing tricks. Your environment literally rearranges itself, or rather, your perception aligns with meaningful elements that were always present but previously invisible to your focused attention. A woman in ancient Egypt once asked Thoth about her troubled marriage. As they spoke, a bird landed nearby, picked up a broken twig, and flew away, leaving behind a perfectly intact branch. Thoth pointed to this and explained that sometimes what appears broken must be released before the whole can be revealed. The mechanism works through what Thoth called perceptual magnetism. When your consciousness holds a genuine question or concern, your awareness becomes magnetically attuned to environmental elements that carry relevant information. Street signs, Overheard conversations, book titles glimpsed in passing, even the behavior of animals, all become potential messengers. The key is the authenticity of your seeking. Casual curiosity doesn't activate this channel, but genuine need for guidance creates a powerful alignment between your inner state and external perception. The second channel operates through attentive synchronicity, where focused intention draws relevant information directly to you. Thoth taught that attention acts like a cosmic magnet. When you're genuinely committed to finding answers or opportunities, your focused awareness creates what he called information attraction fields. Consider how this works in practice. You decide to learn about ancient healing methods, holding this intention with real commitment. Suddenly, a colleague mentions a documentary about traditional medicine. The next day, you discover a book on herbal remedies left behind on a park bench. Within a week, you meet someone whose grandmother was a traditional healer. This isn't coincidence. Your sustained attention has aligned your awareness with information streams that were always flowing around you, but remained invisible until your intention created the proper resonance. The third channel reveals something even more remarkable: interpersonal synchronicity. Thoth understood that individual minds aren't separate islands, but interconnected nodes in the universal field. This creates direct consciousness-to-consciousness communication that transcends physical distance and logical explanation. You're thinking about an old friend you haven't contacted in years, and within hours they call you. You and your partner simultaneously wake up from similar dreams. You walk into a room and immediately sense that people were just discussing something that directly relates to your current situation. These experiences point to what Thoth called field resonance. When consciousness operates through the universal lattice we discussed earlier, individual awareness can directly influence and connect with other conscious beings. Ancient Egyptian records describe Thoth demonstrating this principle to his students. He would have one student focus intensely on a specific symbol, while another student, in a different location, would draw whatever came to mind. The results consistently showed remarkable correspondence, proving that consciousness operates through channels that transcend physical separation. External synchronicity represents the fourth channel, where life circumstances align to support your development or provide answers to urgent questions. This is perhaps the most dramatic form of cosmic communication, where the universe seems to orchestrate reality itself around your needs. You desperately need to find new housing, and despite weeks of searching, nothing suitable appears. Then, in a single day, 3 different people independently mention available apartments. You need specific expertise for a project, and someone with exactly those skills sits next to you on a plane. You're facing a major life transition, and opportunities suddenly emerge that perfectly match your hidden desires and capabilities. Thoth explained that these aren't random strokes of luck but expressions of cosmic law. When your inner development reaches certain thresholds, or when you face challenges that require specific resources, the universal field responds by organizing circumstances to provide what you need. The timing often feels miraculous because it reflects the precise moment when you're ready to receive and utilize the support being offered. The fifth and most profound channel is complex synchronicity, elaborate sequences of interconnected, meaningful events that create transformation or revelation. These experiences often unfold over weeks or months, creating intricate patterns that feel like participating in a cosmic intelligence, orchestrating reality for your highest good. A series of seemingly unrelated events leads you to meet someone who becomes crucial to your life's work. A chain of circumstances forces you to confront deep patterns you've been avoiding, ultimately leading to profound healing. Multiple threads of experience weave together to reveal insights that fundamentally shift your understanding of yourself and your purpose. Thoth taught that complex synchronicity represents the universe's most sophisticated communication method. These elaborate sequences require precise timing and coordination across multiple variables, people, places, opportunities, and inner readiness, all aligning in service of your development. When you recognize these patterns, you begin to see your life as an ongoing collaboration with cosmic intelligence. The crucial understanding Thoth emphasized is that these 5 channels aren't random phenomena or wishful thinking. They're expressions of fundamental cosmic laws that govern how consciousness interacts with reality. Once you understand these principles, you can begin consciously engaging with them rather than simply hoping they'll occur. The universe is constantly communicating with you through these 5 channels, The question isn't whether cosmic communication exists, but whether you've developed the awareness to recognize and engage with the intelligence that's already reaching toward you through every moment of your experience. Carl Jung was treating a patient who seemed trapped in rigid, overly rational thinking patterns that were blocking her emotional growth. During one particularly challenging session, she was describing a dream about a golden scarab beetle when suddenly they both heard tapping at the window. Jung opened it, and in flew a rose chafer beetle, the closest thing to a golden scarab found in Switzerland. This wasn't just coincidence, it was what Jung called synchronicity, and it shattered his patient's rational defenses in a way that months of traditional analysis couldn't achieve. What Jung discovered in that moment was something Thoth had encoded in the ancient mysteries thousands of years earlier. The universe itself participates in healing. When consciousness aligns with cosmic intelligence, meaningful coincidences emerge as both medicine and messenger, revealing pathways to wholeness that our rational minds could never calculate. Jung began documenting how his most successful therapeutic breakthroughs occurred not through interpretation alone, but when external events synchronized with internal processes. One patient struggling with feelings of worthlessness kept encountering wounded birds that needed rescue. Another, wrestling with a major life decision, found the same book appearing in 3 different contexts within a week, each time open to passages directly relevant to her situation. These weren't random events. They were what Thoth understood as the universe's diagnostic system in action. Just as your body creates symptoms to alert you to imbalance, cosmic intelligence generates synchronicities to illuminate psychological patterns that need attention. The external world becomes a mirror, reflecting back the precise information your consciousness needs for healing. But here's where most people miss the deeper mechanism. Synchronicity isn't just about noticing meaningful coincidences, it's about understanding that your individual consciousness exists within a larger field of intelligence that actively supports your evolution. When you're aligned with this field, synchronicities flow naturally. When you're out of alignment, they either disappear or take on warning characteristics. I worked with a client who kept experiencing car troubles whenever she was about to make decisions that weren't authentic to her true nature. Her rational mind dismissed this as bad luck, but when we mapped the pattern, every mechanical failure occurred within 24 hours of her compromising her values for external approval. The universe was literally stopping her in her tracks, forcing her to reconsider paths that would lead away from her authentic development. This is Thoth's principle of cosmic feedback in operation. Your external experiences aren't separate from your internal state. They're generated by the same field of consciousness. When you understand this, every synchronicity becomes a form of self-therapy, revealing unconscious motivations, hidden conflicts, and untapped potentials. The key is learning to read the symbolic language correctly. Repeated encounters with specific animals, numbers, or symbols often indicate areas where your consciousness is trying to integrate new aspects of itself. Finding the same book, song, or phrase appearing multiple times usually signals information your unconscious mind recognizes as crucial for your current development phase. One of the most powerful applications involves relationship healing. When 2 people are genuinely working toward resolution, synchronicities often emerge that provide exactly the insights or opportunities needed for breakthrough. I've seen estranged family members accidentally encounter each other at precisely the moment both were ready for reconciliation. I've witnessed couples discover shared synchronicities that reveal deeper compatibility than their surface conflicts suggested. But synchronicity-based healing extends far beyond individual therapy. Career transitions often announce themselves through synchronistic patterns months before conscious decision-making begins. Creative blocks dissolve when artists learn to recognize and follow synchronistic guidance toward new inspiration sources. Even physical healing accelerates when patients align with synchronistic messages about lifestyle changes, relationship adjustments, or unexpressed emotional needs. The therapeutic relationship itself transforms when both practitioner and client understand they're collaborating with cosmic intelligence rather than relying solely on human expertise. Sessions become explorations of meaningful patterns rather than applications of predetermined techniques. The therapist's role shifts from expert interpreter to skilled pattern reader, helping clients recognize and respond to the universe's ongoing communication. However, there's a crucial distinction between authentic synchronicity awareness and wishful thinking. Genuine synchronicities carry a quality of surprise and rightness that bypasses rational planning. They often involve elements you couldn't have orchestrated consciously and provide information that proves useful in unexpected ways. Forced synchronicities, by contrast, usually reflect projection of desired outcomes onto random events. Start developing your synchronicity awareness by keeping a simple daily log of meaningful coincidences, no matter how minor they seem. Notice patterns in timing, symbols, encounters, and opportunities. Pay special attention to synchronicities that occur during periods of internal conflict or major decision-making. These often carry the most therapeutic value. The ultimate goal isn't to become dependent on synchronistic guidance, but to achieve such alignment with cosmic intelligence that synchronicity becomes a natural feature of daily life. When your individual consciousness harmonizes with the universal field Thoth described, healing happens organically, relationships flow more smoothly, and life decisions emerge from a deeper wisdom than personal preference alone. This is the medicine Thoth encoded in the ancient teachings. We're not isolated beings struggling alone with our problems, but expressions of cosmic consciousness with access to infinite intelligence for healing and growth. Synchronicity is simply the language through which this intelligence speaks, offering continuous guidance toward our highest potential. The ancient Egyptian mystery schools possess something that would make modern neuroscientists weep with envy: a complete understanding of how consciousness operates at both individual and cosmic levels. While we're just beginning to map neural networks and decode brainwaves, they had already mastered the art of consciousness manipulation 3,000 years ago. These weren't primitive rituals performed by superstitious priests. The mystery schools of Egypt operated more like advanced laboratories for human potential, where Thoth's principles were applied with surgical precision to develop capabilities we've forgotten were even possible. Students underwent systematic training that would reshape their consciousness from the ground up, learning to access what they called the mind of Ra, the universal intelligence that permeates all existence. The foundation of their approach rested on Thoth's central teaching, later preserved in the Hermetic axiom, "As above, so below." This wasn't philosophical poetry. It was a precise description of how consciousness patterns in the individual mirror cosmic patterns in the universe. Your thoughts don't just happen randomly in your head. They follow the same mathematical principles that govern planetary orbits, the spiral of galaxies, and the flow of electromagnetic fields through space. Think about this practically. When you experience a sudden insight, that moment of clarity follows the same pattern as lightning finding its path to ground. When you feel drawn to someone across a crowded room, you're experiencing the same attractive force that holds solar systems together. The ancient Egyptians mapped these correspondences with extraordinary detail, creating what amounted to a user's manual for cosmic consciousness. Their healing practices demonstrate this understanding beautifully. Egyptian physicians didn't just treat symptoms, they worked with the cosmic patterns underlying illness. They recognized that disease often manifested when someone's individual consciousness fell out of alignment with universal rhythms. Healing required restoring that synchronization, bringing the person back into harmony with cosmic intelligence. The diagnostic methods they developed would seem like magic to us today. Priests trained in Thoth's wisdom could read the state of someone's consciousness by observing how synchronicities manifested around them. Repeated accidents suggested resistance to necessary change. Dreams of water indicated emotional blockages. Animals behaving unusually near someone revealed disruptions in their connection to natural intelligence. But perhaps their most sophisticated application involved what we now call the collective unconscious. Jung discovered this shared layer of human consciousness in the 20th century, but Egyptian mystery schools had been working with it for millennia. They understood that individual minds aren't separate islands, we're all connected through deeper currents of awareness that flow beneath ordinary consciousness. This knowledge enabled them to influence group consciousness with remarkable precision. The great festivals of Egypt weren't just religious celebrations. They were carefully orchestrated events designed to harmonize the collective mind of entire populations. Thousands of people would participate in synchronized rituals that aligned their individual consciousness with cosmic rhythms, creating periods of social harmony and shared purpose. The techniques they developed for accessing universal intelligence involved sophisticated combinations of meditation, sacred geometry, and ritual practice. Students learned to quiet their personal thoughts until they could perceive the deeper patterns of cosmic mind directly. They discovered that consciousness, like water, naturally seeks its own level. And when you remove the barriers, individual awareness spontaneously expands to encompass universal intelligence. Sacred sites throughout Egypt were constructed as amplification devices for these practices. The Great Pyramid wasn't just a tomb, it was a consciousness-altering machine designed using Thoth's principles of sacred geometry. The angles, proportions, and acoustic properties create specific resonance patterns that facilitate expanded awareness. Standing in the king's chamber, your brainwaves naturally synchronize with the Schumann resonance of Earth's electromagnetic field. This is where the story takes a darker turn. As civilizations became more materialistic and hierarchical, those in power realized that Thoth's wisdom posed a fundamental threat to their control. People who could access cosmic intelligence directly didn't need intermediaries. Individuals who understood their connection to universal consciousness couldn't be easily manipulated or controlled. The knowledge was systematically suppressed and hidden. Mystery schools were disbanded, texts were destroyed, and the techniques were driven underground. What survived was often corrupted, with the consciousness-expanding elements removed and only the control mechanisms preserved. Modern advertising and media manipulation use degraded versions of these same principles, but in reverse. Instead of connecting you to cosmic intelligence, they're designed to disconnect you from it. The constant stream of information, the manufactured urgency, the emotional manipulation. These techniques exploit your natural synchronic awareness to keep you trapped in reactive patterns rather than expanding into cosmic consciousness. Understanding Thoth's original teachings provides both protection and liberation. When you recognize how your consciousness naturally operates, you become immune to unconscious manipulation. You can feel when someone is trying to override your natural awareness, and you can choose to maintain your connection to deeper intelligence instead. The practical applications for modern life are profound. Ancient Egyptian techniques for reading synchronicities can be adapted to navigate contemporary challenges with remarkable precision. Learning to align your consciousness with cosmic rhythms transforms decision-making from guesswork into navigation. You begin to recognize the deeper patterns that connect all events, seeing opportunities and avoiding obstacles with an almost supernatural clarity. The key is remembering that your individual consciousness isn't separate from cosmic intelligence. It's a unique expression of the same universal awareness that moves the stars and grows the trees. When you stop fighting this connection and learn to work with it consciously, you discover capabilities that our ancestors took for granted but we've forgotten were even possible. This ancient science of consciousness manipulation, used properly, doesn't control or diminish awareness. Instead, it liberates consciousness to express its full cosmic potential through your individual experience. Most people live their entire lives in what I call cosmic amnesia, a state where you're constantly reacting to circumstances instead of consciously participating in their creation. You wake up, check your phone, absorb whatever emotional programming the news cycle is pushing, and spend your day responding to other people's agendas, other people's timelines, other people's definitions of success and failure. This isn't your fault. The educational system, media landscape, and social structures we've inherited are designed to keep you in this reactive state. When you're constantly responding to external stimuli, you have no bandwidth left to notice the subtle intelligence that's always trying to communicate with you through synchronicity. You become deaf to the cosmic conversation that Thoth understood as humanity's birthright. But here's what changes everything. The moment you begin to recognize that synchronicity isn't random coincidence but actual communication from a deeper intelligence, your entire relationship with reality shifts. Instead of being a victim of circumstances, you become a conscious participant in cosmic creation. The ancient Egyptian mystery schools that preserved Thoth's teachings had specific practices for developing this cosmic consciousness. Modern research in quantum physics and consciousness studies is finally catching up to what they knew thousands of years ago, that individual awareness is intimately connected to universal intelligence, and synchronicity is one of the primary communication channels. Let me give you a practical framework for reclaiming this connection. The first step is developing what I call synchronicity sensitivity through daily meditation. Not the kind of meditation where you're trying to empty your mind or achieve some blissful state, but focused attention training that quiets the mental noise so you can perceive subtle guidance. Start with just 15 minutes each morning. Sit quietly and observe your thoughts without engaging them. Notice how your mind wants to plan, worry, analyze, and control. This constant mental chatter is what blocks synchronicity awareness. As you develop the ability to observe your thoughts rather than being consumed by them, you create space for cosmic intelligence to communicate. The second practice is synchronicity journaling. Keep a daily record of meaningful coincidences, unexpected encounters, recurring symbols, or themes that appear in your life. Don't dismiss anything as just coincidence. Write down the phone call that came exactly when you were thinking about someone, the book that fell off the shelf containing information you needed, the conversation you overheard that answered a question you'd been pondering. After several weeks of consistent journaling, patterns will emerge. You'll begin to see how cosmic intelligence has been trying to guide you towards certain experiences, relationships, or opportunities. This isn't wishful thinking, it's pattern recognition that becomes increasingly accurate with practice. The third element is conscious intention setting, but not the kind promoted by popular manifestation teachings. Instead of trying to manipulate the universe to give you what your ego wants, you learn to align your intentions with cosmic intelligence. Before making decisions, ask yourself, what wants to emerge through me? Rather than, how can I get what I want? This distinction is crucial. When you're operating from ego desires, you're swimming against the cosmic current. When you align with what wants to emerge, you're supported by synchronicities that guide you toward your highest potential. Now, developing discernment is essential here. Not every coincidence is meaningful synchronicity, and not every synchronicity requires immediate action. Genuine synchronicity usually has several characteristics. It feels significant rather than random, it connects to current life themes or questions, and it often involves perfect timing that couldn't have been orchestrated through normal planning. Wishful thinking, on the other hand, tries to force meaning onto random events. If you're desperately hoping for a sign about whether to contact an ex-partner, you might interpret any reference to their name as cosmic guidance. Real synchronicity doesn't feel desperate or grasping, it feels like recognition. Like, of course this happened now. I've worked with clients who've navigated major life transitions by following synchronistic guidance. Sarah, a corporate lawyer, kept encountering articles about sustainable farming and meeting people involved in regenerative agriculture. At first, she dismissed these as random coincidences. But when a farming workshop was unexpectedly offered through her company's wellness program, and she met someone there who became both a mentor and romantic partner, she recognized the synchronistic thread guiding her toward a complete career change. Marcus, a musician struggling with creative blocks, began noticing that certain songs would play on random radio stations exactly when he needed to hear them. He started paying attention to these musical synchronicities and discovered they were guiding him toward a new compositional style that eventually launched his professional breakthrough. The key is learning to follow synchronistic threads without attachment to specific outcomes. When you're too invested in a particular result, you lose the flexibility to recognize how cosmic intelligence might be guiding you towards something even better than what your limited perspective could imagine. Common obstacles to synchronicity awareness include overthinking, which analyzes every coincidence into meaninglessness, and fear of appearing irrational to others who haven't developed this sensitivity. Remember, most people are operating in cosmic amnesia. Their inability to perceive synchronicity doesn't invalidate your experience. Another obstacle is attachment to timing. Cosmic intelligence operates on different timescales than human impatience. A synchronicity today might be preparing you for an opportunity that won't manifest for months. Trust the process rather than demanding immediate results. Thoth's wisdom suggests that developing cosmic consciousness is humanity's natural evolutionary path. We're moving from unconscious reactivity toward conscious co-creation with universal intelligence. Synchronicity awareness is both a symptom of this awakening and a tool for accelerating it. When you begin living in conscious relationship with synchronicity, everything changes. Decisions become easier because you have access to guidance beyond your limited perspective. Relationships improve because you're attracted to people who support your highest development rather than those who reinforce your unconscious patterns. Creative projects flow because you're aligned with cosmic creativity rather than forcing outcomes from ego. This is just the beginning of remembering who you really are, not a separate individual struggling against an indifferent universe, but a unique expression of cosmic intelligence, consciously participating in the ongoing creation of reality itself. we stand at an unprecedented moment in human history. The ancient wisdom that Thoth encoded in symbols and mystery teachings is converging with cutting-edge discoveries in quantum physics and consciousness research. What once seemed like mystical speculation is now being validated by rigorous scientific investigation. The field effects that create synchronicity, the observer effect in quantum mechanics, the discovery that consciousness appears to influence physical reality at the subatomic level, these aren't separate phenomena. They're different aspects of the same fundamental truth that Thoth understood millennia ago. Consider how quantum entanglement demonstrates that particles remain connected across vast distances, instantly affecting each other regardless of space and time. This mirrors exactly what Thoth taught about the interconnected nature of all existence. When Princeton's Engineering Anomalies Research Laboratory spent decades documenting how human intention could influence random number generators, they were essentially proving what Egyptian initiates learned in the mystery schools, that consciousness and physical reality are intimately connected. But here's what makes this moment truly extraordinary. You're not just witnessing this convergence, you're participating in it. Every time you notice a meaningful coincidence, every time you trust your intuition and it leads you to exactly what you need, every time you feel that sense of connection to something larger than yourself, you're bridging two worlds. You're connecting the old paradigm that sees consciousness as a byproduct of matter with the emerging understanding that consciousness might actually be fundamental to reality itself. This isn't just personal growth we're talking about. When you develop your awareness of synchronicity and begin to consciously participate in the field of universal intelligence, you become part of humanity's evolutionary leap. Think about it, our species has spent thousands of years developing our rational, analytical capabilities. We've mastered the physical world through technology and science, but we've largely ignored or suppressed our intuitive, field-sensing abilities. Now we're reaching a point where we need both. Look at how technology itself is evolving to mirror the principles Thoth described. The internet creates instant global communication, reflecting the immediate connectivity of the universal field. Social media algorithms seem to know what we're thinking before we do, demonstrating how information flows through interconnected systems. Artificial intelligence is beginning to exhibit behaviors that suggest something beyond mere computation, patterns that look suspiciously like intuition and creativity. But technology alone won't solve our deepest challenges. The environmental crisis, the breakdown of social cohesion, the epidemic of anxiety and depression, the sense that modern life lacks meaning, these are all symptoms of disconnection from cosmic consciousness. We've become so focused on manipulating the external world that we've forgotten how to harmonize with the intelligence that creates and sustains it. The ancient Egyptians didn't face ecological collapse because their civilization was built on principles of cosmic harmony. They understood that human society needed to align with natural cycles and universal laws. When we try to dominate nature instead of cooperating with it, when we prioritize short-term gain over long-term sustainability, when we treat consciousness as irrelevant to our decision-making, we create the very problems that now threaten our survival. This is where your individual awakening becomes crucial for our species. When you learn to recognize and follow synchronicity, you're not just improving your personal life, you're demonstrating a new way of being human. You're showing others that it's possible to live in partnership with universal intelligence rather than in opposition to it. The field effects that create meaningful coincidences in your life also influence everyone around you, often in ways they don't consciously recognize. I've watched this happen repeatedly. Someone begins paying attention to synchronicity and develops their cosmic awareness. Their friends and family start noticing that things seem to flow more smoothly when they're around. Opportunities appear, problems resolve more easily, creative solutions emerge from nowhere. The person isn't trying to influence others. They're simply embodying a different relationship with reality, and that embodiment creates ripple effects through the field. Imagine what becomes possible when this understanding reaches critical mass. Instead of societies built on competition and scarcity thinking, we could have civilizations that operate on principles of cooperation and abundance, not because we've imposed these values through willpower, but because we've learned to align with the natural intelligence that governs all complex systems. The signs of this transformation are already visible. More people are questioning materialist assumptions about consciousness. Meditation and mindfulness practices are entering mainstream medicine, education, and business. Scientific research is increasingly focused on understanding the role of consciousness in physical processes. Ancient wisdom traditions are being studied with new respect and sophisticated methodologies. What Thoth encoded in his teachings was essentially a user manual for conscious evolution. The techniques for developing cosmic awareness, the understanding of how individual consciousness connects to universal intelligence, the recognition that synchronicity reveals the underlying order of reality, these weren't meant to be esoteric secrets. They were meant to be humanity's next developmental step. We're living through the early stages of this transition right now. The old paradigm that treats consciousness as a mere epiphenomenon of brain activity is giving way to a new understanding that sees consciousness as fundamental to the universe itself. The mechanistic worldview that reduces everything to separate, competing parts is being replaced by a recognition of the profound interconnectedness that Thoth taught his students to perceive and navigate. Your role in this transformation isn't to convince anyone of anything or to force change to happen faster. Your role is to embody the principles you've learned, to trust the intelligence that speaks through synchronicity, and to live as an example of what becomes possible when human consciousness aligns with cosmic consciousness. Every time you follow your intuition instead of just your analytical mind, every time you trust the process instead of trying to control every outcome, every time you recognize the meaningful patterns that connect your inner experience with outer events, you're contributing to humanity's collective awakening. You're helping to birth a species that lives in conscious partnership with the intelligence that creates galaxies and guides the migration of birds, and orchestrates the precise timing that brings the right people into your life at exactly the right moment. This is Thoth's ultimate teaching, that individual awakening and collective evolution are not separate processes. They're two aspects of the same cosmic intelligence, expressing itself through the magnificent complexity of human consciousness discovering its own divine nature. If this video resonated with you, let us know by commenting, "I understood it."